Waitress thought she could hide her secret until her daughter called the billionaire CEO dad. The dining room was quiet, the air filled with the soft clinking of silverware, until a little girl ran across the restaurant floor straight into the arms of a millionaire, calling him dad. Everyone froze. The waitress, her mother, stood stunned. What no one knew was that this wasn't a mistake. It was a moment waiting to happen. A child's innocent heart had just uncovered a secret even fate had forgotten. But who was this man? And why were there tears in his eyes? It was just another slow Tuesday morning at Willow and Pine, a cozy little restaurant tucked away on a quiet street in Vermont. Outside, leaves rustled softly in the early fall wind. Inside, the scent of fresh coffee mingled with bacon on the grill, and the soft hum of old jazz played through a dusty speaker in the corner. Behind the counter, Linda Evans, serene, poured her third pot of coffee. Her apron was stained from the breakfast rush. Her sneakers squeaked softly on the linoleum floor. But what stood out wasn't her exhaustion. It was the way her eyes kept flicking toward the back, where a little girl sat at a booth, swinging her legs. That little girl, Lily, was only 5, with soft brown curls, a chipped tooth, and a smile so bright it could light up the dullest corner of the world. She was clutching a worn stuffed bear and coloring quietly on a napkin. Linda had no choice but to bring her in that morning. The sitter canceled last minute, and missing work simply wasn't an option. She had bills to pay, rent to cover, and a daughter to feed. As Linda wiped down the counter, her manager gave her that tight-lipped look. "She can stay a bit," he said, "but just keep her quiet." Linda nodded quickly. She always nodded, always said, "Thank you," always worked harder than anyone else in the room. Then he walked in, not loud, not dramatic, just present. A man in a perfectly cut charcoal gray suit, shoes polished like glass. He sat at table 7, the one near the window, where the sunlight hit just right. His face was unreadable, jaw sharp, eyes distant. The type of man who looked like he hadn't smiled in years and didn't plan to. He didn't order much, just coffee, black. Didn't look up when she approached. Didn't speak unless necessary. But Linda noticed the watch, the one that cost more than her rent, and the way his cufflinks caught the light, the way the whole room shifted just a little bit quieter when he sat down. He didn't belong here, not in a place with scratched menus and wobbly tables. She brought him his coffee, smiled politely, and walked away without thinking twice. After all, rich men like that didn't notice women like her. But Lily did. One moment she was coloring. The next, she had slid off the booth and was walking running across the room. Linda turned just in time to see her daughter leap into the stranger's lap with a squeal. "Daddy!" she cried, wrapping her arms around his neck, and the restaurant went silent. Linda's heart stopped. She ran over, panicked, apologizing, stammering, trying to pull her daughter away from the man she had never seen in her life. But then he looked up, and Linda saw something in his eyes that didn't make sense. A flicker of something soft, something wounded, something that looked a lot like recognition. He didn't push the child away. He didn't scold. He simply whispered, "Lily." Chapter 1. The moment everything changed. There are moments in life that feel like a shift in gravity, when something pulls your world off its axis and nothing ever spins the same again. This was one of those moments. Linda stood frozen beside table 7. Her hand still held the receipt she hadn't dropped off yet. Her mouth was half open in apology, but no words came. Lily had flung herself into a stranger's arms. A powerful, sharply dressed man who looked like he belonged on the cover of Forbes, not in the arms of a little girl with paint on her fingers. "Daddy," Lily whispered again, her cheek pressed against the lapel of his tailored jacket. "I knew you'd come today." The room stilled. Forks hovered. Conversations fell off mid-sentence. Linda felt every pair of eyes land on her like spotlights. She rushed forward, voice cracking. "Lily, no. Sweetheart, that's not..." But she stopped when she saw the man's face. Not anger, not confusion, tears. He blinked quickly, but not fast enough to hide the way his eyes had gone glassy. His lips parted barely, like he was trying to breathe through something old, something heavy. "Lily?" he repeated softly, his voice like gravel, softened by time. How do you know my name?" Lily giggled. "It's mine too. I'm Lily Grace. You're Ethan. Mommy told me your name once when she thought I was sleeping." Linda's knees nearly gave out. Ethan Blake. She knew that name. Everyone in Vermont did. Billionaire, CEO of Blackstone Capital, owned half the hotels in the state and most of the silence in a room. She had waited on him once, maybe twice. He never looked up, never said more than 2 words. And now, her daughter was sitting in his lap, calling him daddy. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. Linda gently scooped Lily into her arms, her voice low and shaken. "Baby, he's not your..." But before she could finish, Ethan spoke. "Miss Evans, is it?" His voice was steady now, sharp. The CEO tone everyone knew. Linda nodded, cheeks flushed, heart thudding in her throat. "I'd like a word," he said, motioning to the booth across from his. "Privately, if that's all right." Linda looked down at Lily, who was smiling in her arms, like this was all a dream come true. And in her eyes, maybe it was. She didn't want to make a scene, so she nodded. They sat across from one another. Ethan, with his elbows resting on the table, hands clasped. Linda kept her arm around Lily, who had settled beside her, humming softly and coloring again like none of this was unusual. "Miss Evans," Ethan began, his eyes unreadable now. "I'm not angry, just confused. Why does your daughter think I'm her father?" Linda's voice cracked. She doesn't have one. At least, not someone who's ever been around. I never told her about him, I swear. I've never even spoken your name, but she knew it. "Yes," Linda said softly. "She overhears things sometimes. She has an imagination." Ethan stared at her for a long moment, then turned to Lily. "Lily," he said gently, "why did you think I was your dad?" Lily looked up, eyes wide and honest. "Because I saw you in my dream," she said simply. "Mommy was crying, and you came and gave her a coat and a flower, and you hugged me. It felt warm." Ethan blinked. Linda could barely breathe. Lily continued, as only a child could, without fear or doubt. "I didn't know your face, but today I saw you sitting here, and my heart said, that's him. So I ran." Ethan didn't speak, but something shifted behind his eyes, like an ache rising from a place too long buried. He looked at Linda, voice hushed. "How old is she?" "5, Linda whispered. His hand clenched slightly. He was silent for a beat too long. Then he stood, pulled a business card from his wallet, and placed it on the table. "I want to talk again. Not here. Not like this." "Why?" Linda asked, her voice tight with fear. He met her eyes. "Because I don't believe in coincidences anymore. A moment that started as an accident has cracked open something neither of them can explain." But is this fate? Or the beginning of a storm? Chapter 2. Things we don't say out loud. The apartment was quiet that night, except for the ticking of the old kitchen clock and the sound of Lily breathing softly in her sleep. Linda stood by the window, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, staring out at the parking lot below. Her fingers held tight to the business card, now worn at the edges from being turned over 100 times. Ethan Blake, Blackstone Capital, private line. His name looked cold in print, But his eyes earlier, they hadn't been. They looked like someone who'd seen something he wasn't ready to feel again. She didn't know why it shook her. She didn't know why she cared. He wasn't part of their life. Not really. Just a man at table 7 who happened to be in the right place at the wrong moment. Or maybe the other way around. But Lily had never been wrong about people. That's what scared her the most. A soft knock broke the silence. Linda turned, tightening the blanket around her. She opened the door to find Rachel, her neighbor from 3B Hair and Curlers, fuzzy socks and a pint of Rocky Road in hand. "I brought emergency dessert," Rachel said simply. "You looked like you were having a crisis through the walls." Linda cracked a tired smile. I'm fine." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Then why is your face doing that thing, where it looks like you're trying not to fall apart?" They sat at the kitchen table. The ice cream between them melted slowly as the hours deepened. "Tell me," Rachel said softly. "What happened?" Linda hesitated. Then, like a dam cracking, she told her the restaurant, the stranger, the tears, the name, and Lily running like she just found the piece she didn't know was missing. When she finished, Rachel sat back, eyes wide. "Okay. So, your daughter thinks a literal billionaire is her dad." "She doesn't think," Linda said. "She feels, and I know Lily, she doesn't make up things like this. She's not some kid craving attention." Rachel leaned forward. "And this guy, this Ethan, what did he do?" Linda looked down at the card again. "He didn't run. He didn't panic. He just looked at her like she'd cracked something open inside him." There was a long pause. "You know what, I think," Rachel said. "No." Linda sighed. "But I'm sure you're going to tell me. I think you're scared. Because deep down, some part of you thinks Lily might be right. That this man, whoever he is, might be something more than a stranger." Linda stood, her voice shaking now. "I can't afford to think that." "Why not?" "Because people like him don't stay," she whispered. "They don't come back. They don't look back. And I can't let my daughter fall in love with a fairy tale that won't be there in the morning." Rachel stood too and touched her arm. "Maybe, or maybe this isn't a fairy tale. Maybe it's just a second chance showing up dressed like something impossible." Later that night, Linda tiptoed into Lily's room. The little girl was curled beneath a faded pink blanket, her bear tucked tight under one arm, her cheeks still slightly flushed from sleep. Linda sat beside her, brushing a curl from her forehead. "Why did you run to him today?" "Baby," she whispered, though she knew Lily wouldn't answer. But Lily stirred, still dreaming, still half asleep, she murmured. "Because he smelled like the dream." Linda blinked. "What dream?" "The one where he hugs you when you cry." Tears pricked at Linda's eyes before she could stop them. She sat in the dark for a long time, holding her daughter's tiny hand, wondering how a man she barely knew had suddenly been stitched into their story. Sometimes, it's not what we remember that matters. It's what the heart refuses to forget. Chapter 3. A table between us. The view from the 52nd floor was the kind of thing people put on postcards, glittering skyline, steel and glass stretching toward heaven. But Ethan Blake wasn't looking at the city. He was staring at the drawing on his desk, a crayon sketch, uneven lines, a smiling stick figure with curly hair, holding hands, with a man in a suit. On the top, in shaky kid handwriting, "Me and Daddy at the pancake place." Signed, Lily Grace. He hadn't meant to keep it. But when the waitress, Linda, handed it to him yesterday, her hands shaking, he couldn't throw it away. "She said, you should have this," she'd said, avoiding his eyes. "She wanted you to put it on your fridge." Ethan didn't have a fridge, not one with magnets or memories. But the drawing sat there anyway, mocking him, breaking him. His assistant buzzed through the speaker. "Mr. Blake, she's here." He swallowed. "Send her in." Linda walked into the office, like she was walking onto a battlefield. Her eyes scanned the space mahogany walls, glass shelves, books arranged by spine color. She didn't belong here, and Ethan felt it too. But then again, neither did he. Not anymore. "Thank you for coming," he said, standing. "I didn't come for you," she replied quietly. "I came because my daughter has been talking about you every hour since that day. And because I need answers." She sat down. He did too. A wide table separated them, polished, cold, formal. "So ask," Ethan said gently. Linda took a breath. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice stayed steady. "Why didn't you look surprised when she hugged you?" He blinked. "I was, but not in the way you think." Linda leaned in. "Then explain it to me. Because my daughter, who's never met her father, just looked at you like she'd found him. And you didn't push her away. You held her." Ethan exhaled slowly. "I lost someone," he said, "a long time ago. Her name was Grace." Linda stilled. "She was the only woman I ever imagined having a family with. She left, or maybe I pushed her away. Either way, she was gone. And the day she left, she told me she was late, but I never followed up, never asked." Linda's eyes widened. "What year?" 5.5 years ago." Her breath hitched. "She didn't tell you she was pregnant. She never got the chance. Or maybe I didn't give her space to say it." Linda stood, stepping back like someone had just thrown open a door she wasn't ready to walk through. "You think Lily is yours?" "I don't know," Ethan said honestly. "But she looked at me, and I felt something I haven't felt in years." "You felt guilty." Linda snapped. "That's not the same as being a father." Ethan looked up, his voice lower now. "I'm not trying to take her or rewrite her story. I just want the truth. For her, for you, for me." Silence stretched. Then, quietly, Linda asked, "Would it break your heart if she wasn't?" Ethan hesitated, then whispered, "It already is." Outside the glass windows, the world moved like nothing had changed. But inside, two people sat at a table, the kind that could separate strangers or become the place where a new story begins. Some truths are born not in words, but in the quiet space between two aching hearts. And sometimes a child sees what two adults have forgotten how to. Chapter 4. He brought flowers. She closed the door. It had been 4 days since the meeting in Ethan's office. 4 days since Linda had walked out of that glass box of a room with shaking hands and questions that kept her up through the night. She hadn't told Lily anything, just that sometimes people weren't who they seemed, and sometimes even grown-ups had to take time to think. But Lily was 5, and 5-year-olds don't wait. Every night before bed, she'd ask, "When's Daddy coming again?" Every morning, she'd check the front window, and every time Linda gently told her, "He's not your daddy, baby. He's just a nice man we met." Lily would frown, "But he feels like mine." Linda stood in the kitchen now, the smell of boiling pasta thick in the air, trying not to check her phone again, trying not to hope, trying not to remember the way Ethan had looked when he said, "It already is." A knock at the door broke through the noise of the boiling water. She didn't move at first. The knock came again, softer this time, like whoever stood there wasn't sure they were welcome. She opened it. Ethan stood in the hallway, wearing no suit today, just a gray sweater and a bouquet of wildflowers in his hand. His voice was quiet. "I didn't come to talk. I came to listen." Linda's throat tightened. "You shouldn't be here." He nodded once. "I know, but I am." She looked down at the flowers, wild daisies, some lavender, even a sprig of mint, messy, imperfect, not store-bought. Her hand lingered on the doorframe. "I'm not ready," she whispered. "I'll wait." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." And then Lily's voice rang from the living room. "Mommy!" "Who is it?" Linda stepped out and gently closed the door behind her, leaving Ethan in the hallway. the flowers still in his hand. She didn't lock the door, but she didn't open it again either. That night, after Lily fell asleep with her hand wrapped around the stuffed bear again, Linda sat at the kitchen table. The flowers sat in a jar beside her, not because she invited him in, but because when she opened the door 2 hours later to take out the trash, they were waiting by the welcome mat. She stared at them now, like they held a question she wasn't ready to answer. She still didn't know if Ethan Blake was Lily's father, but part of her was beginning to wonder if maybe it didn't matter, because Lily didn't run to DNA that day. She ran to something that felt safe. And for Linda, safe had always been something she had to build with her own hands, never something anyone gave her. She looked at the flowers again. They were starting to open. Some doors don't need to be slammed. Sometimes, the quiet click of hesitation is louder than any goodbye. Chapter 5. Coffee, Crayons, and Second Chances. The restaurant was busier than usual for a Saturday, the kind of full that made plates clatter louder and coffee pots work overtime. Linda moved like she always did, with practiced grace, hair pulled into a messy bun, not a second to spare between orders. But today, her hands felt slower. Today, she'd caught herself looking toward the door. More than once, she told herself it was nothing. But the truth was, some part of her wanted him to show up, and that scared her more than not knowing who Lily's father really was. At exactly 9:03 a.m., the bell above the door chimed. He didn't come in like a man who owned half the county. He came in like someone hoping to be welcome. Ethan Blake wore jeans, a navy coat, and in his hand, not flowers. This time was a box of crayons and a brand new sketch pad. Linda stared at him for a long moment from behind the counter. He didn't wave, didn't ask for a table. He just took the corner booth and waited. After 30 minutes, she finally walked over, notepad in hand, apron still smudged with syrup. "You want coffee?" He nodded. "And maybe 5 minutes of your time." She hesitated. "I'm working." He glanced at the sketch pad. "I'll wait." Linda walked away before her heart could say something. Her mouth wasn't ready to. It wasn't until after the rush, when the tables were quieter and the jazz playing again, that she slid into the booth across from him, arms crossed, eyes wary. Ethan didn't look at her like she was some project to solve. He just looked tired, but a kind of tired that felt honest. "I didn't come to push," he said. "I came to understand." Linda stayed quiet. He gestured toward the crayons. "She said she wanted to draw me something. I thought I'd give her better supplies." Linda blinked. "You remembered that." "I remember everything she said." Something in her shifted. "I still don't know who you are," she whispered. "I don't either," he said. "But I want to find out, not just about Lily. About this." He paused. "You." Linda stood abruptly, but not angrily. She picked up the coffee mug, refilled it without asking, and set it down again. Then she walked away. But this time, she looked back. That afternoon, when her shift ended, Rachel was waiting by the employee lockers with that look, the one that said, "I know something you're not saying." "Well," Rachel asked, crossing her arms. "Did Prince Suit show up?" Linda bit her lip. "He came, brought crayons." Rachel blinked. "Okay, that's kind of adorable. What else?" "Nothing." He sat. He waited. He asked for nothing. And Linda turned away. But Rachel caught the quiet smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. "Oh my God," she gasped. "You're starting to like him." "No," Linda said too fast. "I'm starting to see him. That's different." That night, Lily curled up in her lap and asked, "Can I draw him again?" Linda tucked her in gently. "Why, baby? Because when I do, I feel like he's real, like I'm not making it up." Linda kissed her forehead. "Maybe some things feel real before we understand why." She said it to comfort her daughter, but in the dark, it echoed back to her too. When someone waits for you without asking you to hurry, That's not a tactic. That's love, learning how to knock gently. Chapter 6. Groceries, grass stains, and glimpses of love. Ethan didn't follow her. Not really. But he remembered something Lily had said while coloring in the booth. We always go to the store after Mommy's work. I get to pick one snack if I don't get fussy. So he waited, not at the restaurant, at the grocery store across town, not because he planned it, but because some part of him was starting to hope for reasons to stay. They came around 3:30 p.m. Linda's hair was down now, still damp from a quick shower. She wore a faded blue hoodie and jeans that had worn thin at the knees. She wasn't the waitress in the crisp apron. She was just a mother. Lily skipped beside her, mismatched socks and all, humming a tune Ethan didn't recognize, but somehow wanted to remember. They didn't see him. He stayed near the entrance, tucked behind a rack of discount pumpkins, watching. Linda knelt beside Lily by the cereal aisle, letting her choose, not rushing, not correcting, just letting her be little. It was such a simple thing, but Ethan stood there, frozen, the weight of something unspoken pressing behind his ribs. He wasn't used to people moving slowly. He wasn't used to softness. Later, he drove past the old town park and saw them again. Lily was on the swing, her legs kicking up at the sky. Linda sat on the bench, sipping from a thermos, smiling quietly, not because someone was watching, but because the moment deserved it. Ethan parked down the street, stayed in the car, and for the first time in years, he let the moment just be. He remembered a conversation once, back when his father was still alive. A rare one. "You're too focused, Ethan," the man had said, sipping bourbon. "You look at people like numbers. Don't forget, hearts are not assets. They don't grow. When you invest, they grow when you care." At the time, he had rolled his eyes. But now, sitting in a silent car, watching a waitress and her daughter laugh at pigeons, he started to understand. Lily jumped off the swing, running straight into Linda's arms. The hug wasn't dramatic. It wasn't movie perfect. It was real. A child clinging to the only person she trusted. A mother pressing her cheek to her daughter's hair, like it held all the peace she never found in rest. He didn't get out of the car, didn't say anything. But later that night, when Linda got home, she found something on her doorstep. No note, just a brown paper bag. Inside was a box of the cereal Lily had picked, and 2 small cartons of fresh raspberries, the expensive kind she always skipped at the store. Linda stood there for a long moment, bag in hand, heart pounding in a way that felt dangerously close to softness. She didn't need to ask who left it. She didn't need a name on the card. Some part of her already knew. He was watching, not to control, but to understand. Sometimes, love doesn't knock on the front door. It just waits across the street, watching the way you hold your child, and learning how to love you both without being asked. Chapter 7. He sat on the floor. The rain came softly that evening, tapping against the kitchen window, like a familiar knock that didn't need announcing. Linda lit the stove and stirred tomato soup. Lily sat cross-legged on the living room rug, stringing beads onto yarn. The air smelled of grilled cheese and rain-soaked pavement. It was the kind of night that wrapped around you, asking you to stay inside your own quiet. But then came the real knock, this one. Not from the rain. It was hesitant. Twice, then silence. Linda opened the door slowly. Ethan stood there in the hallway, his coat damp at the shoulders, a small bag in hand. "I brought books," he said simply. "Children's books." I wasn't sure if... "Come in," Linda said. She didn't know why the words came. Maybe it was the way he didn't look up right away, or the fact that he brought something that didn't have a price tag, just pages and wonder. Maybe she was just tired of holding every wall up alone. He stepped inside like someone entering a church quiet, cautious, reverent. Lily looked up from her beads and beamed. "You came Ethan smiled. I said I would, without being asked. He slipped off his shoes and sat down on the floor, just like that. A billionaire CEO, folding himself into a cross-legged seat on a second-hand rug with a 5-year-old who barely knew how to spell his name. Linda watched from the kitchen doorway, soup forgotten on the burner. He didn't try to lead. He didn't tell her how smart Lily was. He just listened. Lily showed him her bead bracelet. He asked about the colors. She talked about her bear named Clementine. He asked if Clementine ever got scared of the dark. They laughed, and Linda felt something she hadn't felt in years: ease. They ate soup at the little kitchen table, 3 bowls, 3 mismatched spoons, and not a single cloth napkin in sight. Ethan didn't flinch at the cracked bowl, didn't comment on the sticky placemat. He just said, "This is the best grilled cheese I've had in years." And for once, Linda didn't roll her eyes. She believed him. Later, after Lily had gone to bed, her voice sleepy, whispering, "I like him, Mommy. He makes my heart feel calm." Ethan stood at the door, hand on the knob. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not asking me to prove anything. For just letting me be here." Linda looked at him for a long moment, and then she said something she hadn't planned. "Next time, bring apple juice. We're always out." Ethan smiled. It wasn't a grand gesture, not an invitation into her heart. But it was something. After he left, Linda found the book still on the floor. On the last page of the one about stars, Ethan had written in small, blocky letters, "To Lily Grace, keep shining. You have your mother's light." She closed the book, pressed it to her chest, and stood alone in the quiet heart, trembling not from fear, but from the unfamiliar weight of hope. Sometimes love isn't loud. It doesn't arrive with roses or fireworks. Sometimes love just sits on the floor. Chapter 8. The House with No Photographs. The elevator opened with a soft ding, and Linda stepped out slowly, eyes wide, heart steady. She'd never been here before, never seen where Ethan lived, not even in passing. But now, after weeks of coffees, playground visits, and storybooks on the floor, he had asked her, "I want you to see the place where I built my silence." He had said quietly, "So you understand what Lily's voice has done to it." The penthouse was breathtaking, floor-to-ceiling windows, slate gray walls, polished wood floors that gleamed like a museum. But Linda noticed it immediately. There were no photographs, no frames, no mess. Just space and silence. "You live alone," she said. More observation than question. Ethan nodded. "I always have." He poured her tea, loose leaves, no sugar, and handed it to her with the kind of care people reserve for fragile things. Then he sat across from her at the edge of the leather couch, elbows on his knees. "I want to tell you something," he said, "but it might change the way you see me." Linda sipped the tea. "I've already seen the most important parts of you," she whispered, "but go ahead." He breathed in once, twice. "I grew up in a house where love was used like a reward. You got it when you achieved, when you performed, when you succeeded. My father, he was a man of numbers, no birthdays, no apologies. And my mother," he paused, swallowed. "She left when I was 12, just vanished one afternoon. I came home to cold pasta and a note that said, 'I'm sorry I couldn't stay.'" Linda said nothing. She knew sometimes silence was the most respectful companion. "I learned early that safety came from control, that success was the only thing that stayed." He looked around his vast, perfect home. "So, I built this Blackstone capital, the penthouse, the firm, the respect, the armor, but you never built a home," Linda said softly. He looked at her. "No, I didn't know how." She set the teacup down and moved closer, just enough for her knees to graze his. "What changed?" she asked. Ethan's voice cracked just once. A little girl ran to me and called me Daddy. He stood and walked to the bookshelf, not to pull down a book, but to open a small drawer hidden behind a panel. From it, he retrieved a photograph, a single one. He handed it to Linda. Two people in their 20s, him and a woman with long auburn hair and tired eyes. "This is Grace," he said. "The only woman I ever let in." "She never told you?" Linda asked. "She said she might be late. I told her I had a meeting. I never asked what she meant." He sat down again, this time closer. "If Lily is mine, I'll be whatever she needs. Even if that means being just the man who brings crayons and reads bedtime stories." Linda blinked back a tear. "You already are." Later, as she rode the elevator down alone, she didn't feel overwhelmed by the wealth or the skyline view. She felt humbled by his brokenness. He wasn't the cold billionaire the world thought he was. He was a boy who never had a photograph of love on his wall. But Lily, she had already drawn one for him. Some men are raised to believe love is earned, but a child's hug, freely given, can rewrite everything they were taught to fear. Chapter 9. Bloodlines and Promises. The waiting room smelled like antiseptic and overripe magazines. Ethan sat stiffly, hands clasped, watching the minute hand tick along the clock with punishing slowness. He hadn't slept the night before, barely breathed. Linda sat beside him, arms crossed, not cold, just guarded. Lily was with Rachel, painting rocks in the backyard and pretending the world didn't have questions in it. Dr. Patel finally emerged, a man in his 60s with kind eyes and a voice that never rose above a whisper. "The results are in," he said. "Would you like to come inside?" Ethan looked at Linda. She nodded once, and they followed. The room was quiet, just the soft buzz of the overhead light and the whir of the wall fan. Dr. Patel opened the folder and spoke plainly. "Mr. Blake, you are not biologically Lily Grace's father." The words landed like a pin dropping in a cathedral. Ethan blinked, didn't flinch, didn't speak. Linda turned slowly, watching his face for the change, the shift, the disappointment, the withdrawal, but it never came. He just nodded once. "I understand." Dr. Patel left, sensing the silence needed to be private. Linda's voice broke through at first. "You don't have to stay." He turned to her, eyes clear. "I didn't come into her life because I had to. I came because something in her pulled me back to something I thought I'd lost." Linda's voice was tight. "You thought she was yours." "I still do," he said. She stiffened. "I mean, not by blood, but by heart." He stepped closer, gently, no pressure in his voice. "Do you remember the night I sat on your floor, reading her that book about the stars?" Linda nodded. She fell asleep, holding my sleeve. Ethan said, "And I didn't move for almost an hour. I just let her sleep because it felt like, finally, someone chose me." His voice shook now. "I don't care what the test says. I love her, and I love you. And if there's no place for me in your lives, I'll respect that. But if there is, I'm here. No expectations, no conditions." Linda looked at him for a long time. Then she whispered something so soft, he almost missed it. "You didn't flinch?" "What?" When he said, "You weren't the father." You didn't flinch. Every man I've known would have pulled away. You leaned closer. Ethan didn't speak, because there are no perfect words when a woman's entire life has been built on the fear of being left. That evening, he returned to the restaurant, not as a customer, but as something more. Lily was sitting at the back booth with crayons again. When she saw him, her eyes lit up. "I drew you something," she cried. He sat beside her, and she handed him a new picture, 3 figures, her in the middle, Linda on the left. Ethan on the right, all holding hands. Even if you're not my first dad, she said, you can still be my forever one. He didn't cry, but something in him broke open quietly. That night, Linda stood on the porch, watching the sky turn purple. Ethan stepped beside her. I don't know what we are, she said. I don't know what this is. He took her hand gently. We don't have to define it. Just keep showing up in it. She didn't answer, but she didn't let go either. Some truths are written in blood, but the most sacred ones are written in the quiet act of staying. Chapter 10. A porch light that never goes out. The porch light flickered once, then glowed steady. Ethan tightened the last screw into the fixture, climbed down the ladder, and wiped his hands on a rag. Lily clapped from the steps, bare feet kicking in the dusk air. You fixed it, she beamed. I promised I would, he said. Linda leaned against the door frame, watching them, arms crossed, eyes soft. You didn't have to, she said. I know, Ethan replied, but I wanted her to know the light's always on, just in case. It had been 2 months since the test, 2 months since I'm not her biological father, turned into, I pick her anyway. He didn't move in. He didn't ask for a label. He just kept showing up. Lunchbox forgotten. He dropped it off. School play. He brought roses, one for Lily, one for Linda. Grocery day. There was always a fresh box of raspberries in the bag. Not grand, not loud, just consistent. One Saturday morning, Linda woke up to find a note stuck to her coffee pot. Borrowing Lily for 2 hours? Pancakes and paintbrushes. Let your heart rest. She didn't know what shocked her more, that he'd taken initiative, or that she'd actually rested. That day, she read an entire book on the porch, without guilt, chasing her every page. She didn't know this kind of peace existed, the kind you didn't earn, but were invited into. Ethan wasn't perfect. He still worked long hours, answered emails in the car, and forgot birthdays, including his own. But when he was with them, he was with them. And Linda had come to learn something about men like him. It wasn't that they couldn't love. It was that no one had ever taught them how to love without conditions. Lily was teaching him. One drawing, one bedtime story, one whispered, I missed you at a time. One night, after dinner, Lily was already in bed, and the house was wrapped in quiet. Linda handed Ethan a warm mug of tea and nodded toward the porch swing. They sat in silence, the stars above them blinking like old friends. She finally said, You scare me. He looked over, surprised. Why? Because this feels like forever, and forever's always been the part where they leave. He didn't respond right away. He just reached into his jacket and pulled something out. A small key. He placed it in her hand. What's this? It opens the studio downtown. The art studio. I bought the space last week. Thought you and Lily might want a place to paint together and maybe teach or just be. Linda looked down at the key. It's not a proposal, Ethan added. It's a door. You decide when to open it. She didn't cry. She smiled slow, quiet, and real. Because he wasn't asking her to choose him. He was choosing them over and over and asking nothing in return. Later that night, Lily came downstairs for water and saw them on the porch, wrapped in blankets, talking about stars, like nothing in the world could ever break them. And maybe it couldn't, because some families are built by chance, but the best ones, they're built by choice. Love doesn't always rescue you like a storm. Sometimes it just keeps showing up with raspberries and light bulbs and bedtime stories until the storm inside you finally quiets. The man she didn't choose chose them anyway. There's a kind of silence that settles over a house when the child has fallen asleep and the dishes are done and the world has finally stopped asking for anything. It's not empty. It's full of warmth, of presence, of the quiet hum of love. that no longer needs to prove itself. That's the silence Linda lives in now. Not because life got easier, but because someone stayed. Ethan never needed to be Lily's biological father. He simply chose to be her everyday one. The one who reads the same bedtime story 3 times. The one who keeps spare mittens in his car, just in case she forgets hers. The one who looks at Linda like she's not broken, or tired, or too much, but like she's the exact place his world begins again. Love didn't come to Linda like a rescue. It came like a chair pulled up beside her, quiet, present, steady. And isn't that what we're all looking for? Not a fairy tale, not a man with a perfect suit or perfect past, but someone who sees us in the messy kitchen, in the middle of the grocery store, on our worst days, in our softest shirts, and stays anyway. Some might say it was Lily who brought them together, but maybe it was something deeper. A child's heart that had never been taught to doubt love. So she ran straight toward it, and in doing so, she brought 2 people back to life. If this story moved something in you even quietly, if it reminded you that love can find you no matter how many walls you've built, then maybe it wasn't just a story. Maybe it was something your heart needed to hear. If this story brought tears to your eyes or made you feel less alone, our next one goes even deeper. Another love that rises from pain. Another heart that learns to beat again. Tell us in the comments, have you ever been loved like this? And if you're ready to keep healing with us, subscribe. The next story is waiting, and it's even more beautiful.